And that's my way to make sure that I'm creating value, because again, these are people who are trying to win in their professional roles and personally, right? So if you can do that piece of it, you professionally will lift that's the value that you bring to your brand, right?
What's
Whatever
that rising
brand
tides comment? Right. That's the idea of like, if you, what is it? Rising tides lift all ships, or whatever it is.
Yep.
I mean, I think there's something interesting about the concept of what you're describing, which is I'm not building a partner program. I'm not building a partnership. I'm building an ecosystem of people that are made up of like businesses that add value to the end customer, perhaps in different ways, same ways, complementary ways. But this idea that like we're doing this because we want to do something more than just sell a product or software or whatever it is.
Absolutely. And I think
it's cool. Go ahead. No, please.
No, I was going to say that I think there's different strategic ways that you can think about the partnerships that you need, right? So one of the ways I like to partner first or kick off a partnership is to create content together, right? And if you think about one way to boost your traffic is to go ask 25 of your partners to write 500 words or 350 words about a specific keyword, right? I think the opportunity or the chances that two people are going to write the same English sentence or the same sentence in English is like, you're better off going to Vegas for sure with your retirement pay. But you'll end up with a long form piece of content that answers multiple perspectives or multiple questions. And that's one way to start jacking up, the demand gen multiplier that you bring to other folks.
Well, that's like talking back to your point on the idea of productizing your stories, right? Productizing like the intersection of your business and theirs. Yeah. And I think, and again, like I don't have data to your point, like maybe it's better to go to Vegas and like put it all on, the blackjack table or whatever. But right. I think if I were to make a bet that if you surveyed, every professional, if you will, across the space, you'd hear that the idea of productizing the value itself, right, both in thinking about it in terms of what did they do for us and what did they do for our customer, is probably like the kind of step one that you'd hear, not right. What do we do together that mutually right. delivers value to our customer, and how do we wrap that into a package we can go and sell? Like, how do we empower both our teams to use that in the go-to-market to go actually win?
Absolutely. And I think if you even get away from the binary, so binary, you may still end up into this, hey, I bring these features and this outcome, and you bring this feature and this outcome. So you take it to three or more. And I call this joint solutioning. Right. And so this is where what I think is happening inside of partnerships is venture capital plus innovation plus lean startup, but we don't use any of those methodologies inside of partnerships, or some folks don't use all of those methodologies to take those ideas about the integration that we have, the value it's going to bring, and monetization capabilities or processes after that. If we take it to three, it literally becomes too complex to talk about everybody's features, so we have to talk about none. And then the only thing left to talk about is what's different for the customer. It almost makes it simple, right? If it's one-to-one, it makes it kind of different. What's our better together story? But if we're productizing, going to three, I've seen it tip, and now everybody's all like, well, I can't say this. So the customer's just going to be able to go from here to here to here to here really, really easily. Cut and print, right? And that's kind of no one's selling features, no one's selling, we integrate with that, blah, 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 blah. That is part of the story, but the outcome is, I think there's this minimum viable, better together story that we've seen people invest into partnerships, right? And they slap a logo on a deck and they punch it out, or maybe it's just a landing page. They send it out and they're like, wow, you didn't create demand. Where's our leads, QBR? Nothing happened, right? But you do see those other partnerships that you actually get behind. Say it was Google that you partnered with. So it was all hands on deck for the marketing team. You've got the right videos, you've got the ads, and you're doing events, and you're doing all the right things for productization, right? And you're like, oh, wow, we did a really, really good job. And the partnership team who ran that loved that experience, right? It's almost empathetic leadership to monetize or to productize those better together stories so that they actually stand a chance, right? Because they're competing for attention that's venture funded out there. And they are busy, productizing their unique value proposition. And it's not just you versus other partnerships or you versus yourself. It's you versus everything that's out there for attention, right?
That's cool. So I like the highlight of like the idea of making it not just mutually beneficial, but thinking a little bit of a layer deeper, right? To your point of like, let's take the value specifically, package it up, deliver it to the customer, measure it, look at it, not make it about integration, not make it about a feature set, be very intentional around sort of the output of what we're trying to do here and why we're agreeing to work together, to your point.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. In that framework that you're talking about, the kind of like power of three and whatnot, do you have any kind of, hate to use the expression, but like tips and tricks, guidance, feedback. Like if I'm listening to this, I'm a leader at an organization, I'm hearing you going, I want to do that here. It'd be great if I could figure out how to take the partners that I have that are generating leads for us and they're selling some stuff and we're loving it. Maybe they're servicing our customers and like they build some cool integrations and we're getting that value. How do I pivot? How do I go from that, to your point, singularity, the kind of left or right? How do I blur the lines a little bit, blend the middle?
Yeah, I think that there's a good way is to adjust your partnership contract to make sure that 100% of your partnerships co-invest with you, right? Co-invest in demand generation. You don't need partners who aren't willing to put money in, where their mouth is. And if they're putting money where their mouth is, the next step for you is to go do account mapping, right? Because I say there's gold in them hills, but what it really means is that we're able to take the number of accounts that I can sell tall, deep, and wide to and run back to my chief revenue officer and say, hey, we've got 155 overlap accounts with these 3 partners. I want, X amount of money to go generate this LTV. And part of that means investing in this better together story. I take that story to those partnerships and I say, hey guys, look, I feel like there's this much money in there for us. I estimate that there's this much money in there for you. Do we all want to get down and invest in something unique and telling this story that the world has never heard before, right? And actually, you don't have to be better. You just have to be different. And this is the best way to be different. And there's money on the other end of this if we do it right. So I think that's one of the ways to have that conversation. But that's a key point, right? How do you move if you've never hiked the summit? You don't necessarily know the path.
Yeah. Yeah. But to your point, I think that what you're talking about is opening a dialogue with the people that you're already partnering with, that you're working with, and saying, how do we actually move this thing forward? But that's different, right? Because I think if you listen to most, in particular, and we talked about this in the beginning, but this idea that like partnerships sits, within sales or within CS or within product or whatever, versus being its own org at a lot of B2B SaaS companies,
right? That
needs to change, right? I mean, do you agree with that? We should think about it differently.
I think it's up to the ELT strengths. On where that should lie. I think that whoever recognizes that partnerships is an opportunity to monetize a third way that isn't being leveraged, it can sit right there because they'll get all the help and support that they need. If they think it's just another channel to burn out sales, right? So sometimes marketing teams end up using marketing channels for sales purposes, right? Then it's like, oh, well, email doesn't work. Well, no. It's not that works. It's your philosophy that doesn't match what's actually happening with the buying cycle. So I think that partnerships can sit wherever anybody sees that value and is interested in investing in it.
I love it. What a great place for us to end. So what I heard you say most importantly was that partnerships sits where they see the value, where the organization's leaders and team members see the value and where they can actually capitalize on it, resource it, and deliver that value back to their customers. That's brilliant. I love it. Brilliant. All right. Well, Blake, look, this has been an awesome conversation, and I'm glad we connected. If folks want to connect with you, where do they find you on social media? How do they get in touch?
Yeah, just check me out on LinkedIn. We're about to launch a bunch of new content. We're rolling out a new podcast of our own called Earn It, which has very much the same sentiment as what we're talking about here. But yeah, reach out to me if you want to have a conversation. I'm in a bunch of Slack channels, Pavilion, Partnership Leaders, or Hype Cycle.
I love it. Brilliant. Awesome. Well, very cool. Good conversation today. Appreciate the chat, and we'll definitely have you back on soon.